All right, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Goob Squad. It is the Goobcast. You boo 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 boo. And we're gonna be talking about Tenet. Woo, Tenet.
What is with
Tenet
the
Woo.
baby
and time
talk?
travel and like movies and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
TV and whatever else.
well, I mean, we don't have a big topic to talk about, just the concept of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not a big
Suiting,
deal.
because we are in the year 2021, starting off our very first podcast of the new year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the first one for us for the audience. It's probably like in close to February or something
Yeah.
when this comes out.
So
Speaking
you're
in
probably
recording
living in a better
terms, of
world.
course.
Yeah. So you guys
Maybe.
can tell us.
Maybe they're
if
living
it's
in a better
working,
world. Who
working out for
knows?
you. I know, right?
Maybe Trump is on his fucking second term. Who knows? But we'll leave that for off the podcast.
Yes, please.
We'll leave that for
Let's
other
not.
people.
I dare not mention his name again.
Voldemort. There you are.
Voldemort. The Morts of the
If only we
votes.
could have gotten Voldemort for president. All right, that's the last
Honest-
thing I'm gonna say on that. Seriously.
All right, so yeah, pretty much talk episode 31, and we're talking about Tenet. So yeah, how's
and time
everybody's?
travel and all that shit. Even though
Yeah, all
Tenet
the
is
craziness.
technically not time travel.
Okay, yeah, go on.
Oh, I'm just gonna, keep reiterating how bullshit it is. It's totally time travel.
All right.
But please, anybody,
What
contradict.
do you mean? Wait, what? Like
It's okay.
who said it wasn't time travel?
They say so in the movie that it isn't time travel. It you know
Well,
They-
it's a matter of perception, right? Like the people like it is time travel, but the way you're seeing it, depending on which side you're looking for, like look at like the protagonist fighting himself, right? Like it's time travel if you look at it objectively, but he's seeing it from two different points in time, right? Like he's seeing it as he's going forward the first time, and like let's just call him like the suit protagonist. He's going through and he's fighting the dude in like the SWAT team gas mask, and he doesn't know who it is. But then later in the movie, we see him fighting. We see obviously that he's fighting himself from the future.
Right.
So it's like it's exactly that scene of exposition in the beginning with the scientist lady where she's like, it's just a matter of perception. Like you're just seeing it. It's based on how you're seeing it, whether the bullet is going into your hand or whether you're dropping it. Like that's the thing is like it's for me it's like it is time. It is about time travel. But more than that, it's just about like how we perceive time. And the just general construct of time.
So yeah, if it wasn't, obvious to, our two listeners,
That's
we're
being
definitely going
generous.
full spoilers. We're going full spoilers.
Yeah, as with everything we talk about, it's full spoilers for everything.
For sure. Yeah.
Every other Tenet, and then every other movie or TV show or game we talk about, it's always full spoilers.
So just so that we can be all in like the same, wavelength, can anybody like, summarize the plot of Tenet?
It is.
They're trying to the protagonist and his whatever. I mean, his organization. I guess Tenet technically like they're trying to stop the future, who we never see, the people from the future from destroying the past.
It's
Right,
The,
and they're doing
Because
they're
like
trying to do
they
so
they
with
never explain why or how, and they even say like, okay, like how can the people in the future destroy us like without them destroying themselves? And they say, well, I don't know, but obviously they think it's gonna work, so they're gonna do it.
right.
Which is an interesting idea. The idea of destroying time, the idea of like destroying your past, but somehow you know something, or maybe you don't, and you theorize that you destroy your past, but you can still preserve your present. Is an interesting idea. I've only seen like one other thing ever, and it was like an episode of Star Trek Voyager where like you actually deal with the idea of actually destroying time. Like, not necessarily making alternate timelines or changing anything. You're just literally destroying the fabric of time, going
Right.
backwards.
The way that I understood it was that it's, first of all, the plot itself, it's, as simple, get the MacGuffin before the bad guys get it, before, they destroy, the world, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a spy thriller with time travel.
Yes.
Just like Inception was a heist movie with dream stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And there's just several instances of, both the protagonist and the antagonist, antagonizing each other.
Well,
Man.
the way it was set up at first was that it during the opera scene when they tried to get, I guess, their informant out, like there was that scene where there was already the bullet hole made into the seat, and then when the bullet went in reverse, it was like, what the hell was that all about? And after he was revived and brought back to his operation, and they demonstrated like why were some of these things moving in reverse motion, it tries to set it up like, oh, maybe it's the materials that they're made out of, but it's not really the materials so much as the time that they are native to.
Well, yeah, the radiation that was in the bomb that caused them to be inverted.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, they don't they don't really go further than that with it, which is fine. Like I don't know that you could really add more to this movie and make it like less confusing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's just so many. Like I think we talked about this a little bit before. I don't know if it was on air or off air, but like I really respect Christopher Nolan. Just like, because obviously he gets very granular. Like he's dealt with time many times in his movies before, like in smaller doses. With Interstellar and like it being the time being different on the ship as opposed to the surface of the planet, and then like things with Inception with like the different layers of the dream moving at different rates, and even something like Dunkirk where you have like 3 different timelines sort of colliding. He's dealt with it like sort of more in an ancillary manner, but this one he just goes full force, like it's all about time in this one. And it obviously, I mean, any time travel thing gets absurd, like it just does, because it's it's such a sort of complicated issue. But obviously, he just goes like super granular with it to the point where it's just like, oh, you can't breathe air when you're going back, and like the handling on cars is different, and like all this shit, and it definitely gets absurd, but it's also like I really respect it because it doesn't always work, but man, when it works, it's fucking awesome. Like the idea of like when they're talking about like a temporal pincer maneuver, it's fucking like that was like this is amazing. Like they're showing like they're showing like the soldiers, and he's like explaining how it's working, and like how like half of Sator's team is like going backwards, like half of them going forward, and then they're like radioing it to the other half who's going backwards, and they're pincering them in a temporal fashion. It's just like, it's insane, but it's such a high concept, cool sci-fi thing that like it just brings, every time I watch a Christopher Nolan movie, he just brings, it's so inventive and imaginative, even if it does get ridiculous. And it's amazing. That's it.
Yeah, the way that he plays around with the just the way in which he gives out the story, the way in which he like messes around with storytelling, and and being able to just dispense of the story in convoluted twisted chronological orders. It's just it's always been fascinating. We saw it all the way back from Memento when we were the very first scene, spoiler there, the very first scene of that movie is the last scene. It's actually the very last scene in the entire movie, in the entire story. And in this one, it's just like you said, he gets much more granular, in which you have all these different intersecting storylines happening simultaneously to to have that to actually come together as like one story overall. Like you have all these little pieces of all these chess pieces moving simultaneously to just meet themselves like a almost at the middle. But you have to look at the whole picture of it all.
Yeah, I mean, to even fuck with, like, okay, we're going backwards in time, and now the laws of physics have changed. Like, they're backwards too. Like, when, like, the fucking freeway scene where he's going back, like, he's already seen it, and he's like, the protagonist is going, and he flips, and Sator, like, fucking tries to blow him up, but then it freezes, like, and he almost dies of hypothermia. Is just like, that's such a fucking, that's so high concept. It's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, just that idea of like pincer maneuver, right? It's like you're flanking them from both the past and the future.
Right.
Which is exactly what it feels like to play Apex sometimes.
Tell me about it.
Oh, we had a streak of wins. You just know that, listener.
Completely, yeah. We went all the way in, got wins after wins, nonstop.
Yeah. It's funny that I was just watching a few days ago something about that very concept, about how our perception of time it's attached to our perception of entropy in the universe. The concept of that chaos only increases in the universe, and that is the reason that we only perceive the arrow of time to go in forward in one direction. We can only perceive, an egg. We only ever see an egg, getting smashed. We never see the, egg coming back together, because that would be entropy. That would be, that would be losing entropy in the universe, and that's not something that happens. But it was a good cheat. It was a good cheat for this movie, and being able to, have multiple storylines happen simultaneously.
Yeah, it also adds to the being able to watch it again in a different lens. Yeah, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I think that the concepts were it was definitely one of those things where the concept was so high that it was kind of hard to keep up with it sometimes. But at the same time, was also very I'm always was constantly always assuming what's the next step, or what's the next concept that they're trying to sell me, in terms of the surprise of oh, that guy in the beginning had to be Neil, and I kind of figured that all out near the end, especially when he died, and then you already got the idea from his little trinket on his backpack too. So yeah. It wasn't too surprising, but definitely very interesting to get there, to see all these things colliding and happening all at once. It's pretty wild. I think if I were to say if anything against all his other movies, I still think for me, Inception and Memento is one of his bests. I do like Prestige as well, but I think it's among those in terms of the ones I like from him.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing, I really enjoyed the movie as well. I think the thing about this movie is that, compared to his other movies, is that with his other movies, they're oftentimes cerebral, but they don't really make your brain hurt, whereas this one kind of does, especially in the first viewing. I watched it twice, and I understand, I things that I didn't catch the first time, or that I thought were maybe plot holes or something. I sort of was like, oh, I get it now. It's not a plot hole. It's just hard to understand. It's just kind of it's just a little. It is a little too confusing for at least one watch through. You're just not gonna necessarily get it all in one watch through, which is good for rewatchability, but it's also it's kind of a flaw, and that it is just kind of is that like, I mean, they were talking about in the behind the scenes stuff where they're like, even like describing, I mean, obviously just the way they did the scenes was crazy, but like even like, you know, some dude, you know, when they were doing the freeway chase scene and they were talking about how it's going to go backwards and forwards at the same time, and the guy, you know, Nolan is like, okay, he would ask people, okay, like explain the scene to me. What happens first? Does this happen first, or does this happen first? And they would always get it wrong the first time, no matter who he was talking to. Like no matter like whether it was the script supervisor or anyone, like people who read this thing 100 times, he would have to explain it to them every single time, for every scene setup. So it's like, I mean, yeah, it's both cool and like it's both sort of a jab at the movie at the same time. Yeah, but
yeah, I can imagine being all like, oh God, he's gonna ask me about the movie. I don't understand what's going on. What shot is this? What part of the story is this?
But that is the cool thing, is that like everybody was in it together. They were all confused. So it's not like, you know, it wasn't like one dude was like, oh shit, am I going to get fired? It would be like, oh, Nolan would be like, okay, what happens? And he would get it wrong. And then he'd be like, it's okay, buddy. Here's what actually happens. Now do your job, you know? And it's, yeah. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I can't imagine like if a director with like, who was any other director who would be like, you know, much more sort of strict, and they'd be like, if you don't understand this the first day, you're fucking fired. Like there would be no movie. Like it was just like it wouldn't happen.
It's funny.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those movies where you know the very first time you watch it, you already want to rewatch it for the first time. Yeah, I mean all over again, because you want to look up for all this, little foreshadowings, for all those things that are gonna come back in the plot later on. But yeah, I have to say, like, I really want to watch it again because I had a hard time, just keeping up with like less with the concept, because I did get the overall the concept, but just like all the little minutia of like, okay, who is this guy? Why is he here at this time? Where is this person at this one place? And how all these little pieces intersect that don't really come across very well on first viewing, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially when you're trying to, especially for a person who's, I mean, imagine imagine this being your very first, Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
Like, it would be like, what is going on?
I mean, honestly, it might turn you off to like watching his other movies.
Yeah.
Just because it'd be like, that's kind of too confusing. Like, oh, and then somebody's like, well, you should watch Inception. It's about it's about dreams and the different layers that you're gonna do a heist in. And it's like, what? Like, that sounds even worse. Like, that sounds even more confusing. Like, why would I watch that?
I mean, honestly, Inception is so much more straightforward than this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of my point. Is that like, yeah, all of his movies are like even the more sort of the more heady ones, or the more ones where like it maybe it takes a little while to wrap your mind around the concept. It's still far more straightforward than this movie, for sure.
Yeah.
And I know that was a sort of a negative in a lot of people and a lot of outlets, like reviews, is that like they were just like, I like the movie, but it's just like I don't really understand it, which is, it's fair. It's a tricky line to toe, but it's definitely, I mean, it's very interesting to look at Tenet sort of and compare it to other time travel movies, because this one's certainly, like I said, more granular and just more complex than any other time travel movie I've ever seen, or time travel show, or anything, whether it's Star Trek or Lost or Back to the Future, obviously, something like Looper. Like, I mean, there's all of those are far simpler, even if there are points in it that you don't understand. It's overall, they're definitely different approaches to time travel.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
So,
but I don't know that any of them go. I mean, that's kind of the thing, is that none of them go as deep into the like
mechanics,
concept
right?
of time travel as this one does.
Right.
Like, you're dealing with, like you were saying, like the minutia of it all. Like, you're dealing with, like, okay, exactly how do you breathe air like when you're going back in time? Like, no one, I've never seen anything that like deals with that. So it's just like, yeah, the further in it you go, the more confusing it gets. And yeah, but
yeah, like if you compare it to something like, that everybody's more familiar with, like Back to the Future, where concept of time in that really is just is really just used, to have the kid go from point A to B, but in no way does it mess with the way in which the story is told. Like, it's really just go back. He is in that movie. He's really just going back to get a certain task, accomplish. He just wants his fathers to be together so he can go get himself back to the future. And it's simple to understand. But in this movie, like, the events that happen in this story, some events that happens in a part of the story are affecting simultaneously some other event that's happening within the story.
yeah.
Like, in most other stories, time travel is really just just a bit of a setting, but it doesn't really form a like crucial part of how you tell the story. That's what was really interesting about this movie. And in many ways, it was actually a little, pretty much a lot like Dunkirk, where you have like all these different, intersecting storylines that all come together at the end.
Right. And I think, though, with that other stuff too, like, you're not seeing like it's not two timelines, but you're not seeing like one scene intersect with two different timelines sort of like colliding, like the hallway fight scene with the protagonist. Like, you're not seeing that like in other stuff. Like Back to the Future, the first one, it's what you said, he goes back in time to make sure his parents get together so that he can be born. And then the second one is like him and Doc going into the future, and then Biff takes the almanac back, and then he ends up changing things, so they got to go all the way back to fix that. And but you're not seeing like, and even when you do see scenes where like Marty or Doc are like sort of very carefully like making sure they don't come in contact with their past selves or future selves, like, you're not really seeing those two, like, you're not seeing the timelines collide exactly the way that you see it in Tenet. It's sort of like very carefully moving around it. So it's, yeah, I mean, that alone sort of just makes it confusing, or makes it just harder to deal with in this movie.
So, hey, yeah, how would you guys rank this movie, like, in among the Christopher Nolan movies? Is this one of your favorites? One of your least favorites?
I don't know. I mean, his movies I really enjoy his movies, so it's hard to say. I don't think it's Inception's probably my favorite, and I think I like Prestige as well. Obviously, like, I think Batman Begins and Dark Knight specifically, but I like the whole Dark Knight trilogy. I would say, for me, I think it's better than Interstellar. I don't really remember Memento. I saw it so long ago, and I think I only saw it once. I don't remember the movie well enough to really say exactly where I placed that one. I think I like it better than Dunkirk as well. And I watched that one again pretty recently. So yeah, I'd say I'd like it better than Interstellar and Dunkirk. Better than Dark Knight Rises. Yeah, it probably sits there.
What about you, Sean?
A little hard to place it. I enjoyed this one as much as Memento, in the way that it was a unique take on time.
Right.
I like the action probably as much as Inception. Um, like only
What are
because
some of the
it's
highlights of the movie? What was one of some of your favorite scenes?
him fighting himself essentially was the probably the most entertaining.
Right,
Um,
when he's in the hallway.
Yeah.
yeah, because like it's trippy to kind of see it again in a different perspective, and it brings together the how time can overlap, um, and how much like affect not saying something or not being completely aware of how where the time kind of overlaps is kind of important for the character to not know, um, and
Right.
to play it out because to some
Right.
degree like that not knowing is the advantage of
Yep.
succeeding.
It's the exact opposite of the
Well,
GI
yeah.
Joes. Like not knowing is half the battle.
Well, yeah, like I mean, having someone obviously like Neil to like who understands what's going on and also who understands like who you are, like who the protagonist is and why he's like so important. And like because in that scene in the hallway scene, like the like, let's just call him the suit protagonist versus like the fucking SWAT protagonist. The suit protagonist was gonna kill the SWAT protagonist. Like he was gonna kill him,
Right.
and Neil stopped him. And if he like it wouldn't. It's not like something where like something like Back to the Future, which I love. But like it's not something where it's just like, oh yeah, I died in the past, so now I disappear. Like it's like no, like it in this, it's like if he had killed him, it would have been fine, but then he would have gone to the future and been killed by himself, right? Like he would have died, he would have had this scenario play out, and then he would have died as the SWAT protagonist. And it's only because Neil knew what was going on and he saw that he knew it was him,
Yeah.
that it stopped him.
Yeah.
So like he saved his life, and I mean that whole thing at the end where like Neil's like, "This is it for me. Like this is the end of the friendship for me, but for you, this is the beginning of our friendship. Like you're in the middle." Like,
Right.
and that's sort of an overlying theme across the entire movie is like he's only seeing the protagonist is only seeing one half of the equation, while Neil is seeing it. He's seeing the equation from like the other side. Like he's already been to the future, and now he's going back, and the protagonist is obviously traveling in normally through time, and so it's
there were one
if
side of the
Neil
loop.
wasn't there, like it would be fucked. Like it's because like the protagonist would just have to Neil basically allows the scenario to play out more fourth dimensionally, whereas the protagonist is just sort of he's there to be the hero, but he can't know everything.
Oh Jesus, motherfucking Neil! It's like playing fourth dimensional chess over there. Whereas I always forget how to move the the freaking bishop. In the dragon. Why? Okay. I was gonna say, why is the protagonist trying to shoot himself?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
pretty counterproductive.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. The only thing that I could think was that he was like just trying to make it so that the protagonist was moving himself towards the turnstile. That's the only thing that I could think, like, because to make sure that the fight was like going towards that so he could jump to the turnstile and go back. But yeah, I was wondering that as well.
Yeah, I always feel like I need to rewatch this movie. Maybe it makes sense to go to do the whole suicide with extra steps in retrospective, but I still don't know. Like there's a way I don't want to start poking trying to poke holes at the storytelling because that's just the easy you know uh that's just the low hanging fruit of like I don't know, movie reviews or but just movie you know uh dialogue, conversations that we can have. But it's just like so right there. Like I want to know, wait, why are the people from the future, trying to destroy the previous civilization? Don't they need us for them to exist?
Well, yeah, but that's what I was saying before. Is like, yeah, I mean, it was that's what they like. That's what they were, because he asks that in the movie. Like, how does it work? And it's just as simple that she's like, we don't know. Like, it's like, but they seem to think it works, so they're gonna do it. Like, we don't know how they would be able to destroy their past. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get it, but it was like I was saying before. I'm glad they left that more ambiguous, just because if you tried to add that in and like explain how they were going to destroy the past, it would have been worse. Like, it would have been not only more confusing, but I feel like it would have just been like needless exposition.
Yeah, and I mean, every time travel movie cheats. Like, there's always a moment where, like, they have to find some way to get the movie, the plot going, without adhering strictly to the rules.
I mean, how does that go against the rules, though? They don't know the rules of the future people.
Well, I mean,
like, we don't know what they know.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, if the rules can be just anything that you want them to be, then there's no rules. Like in like I mean,
but the movie has plenty of rules, though. It's not that it's not that it's just anything. This isn't like Game of Thrones, where it's like, there's plot armor and they're just sort of they're literally breaking the rules of their own world. It's like the rules are established, but there's some things that are it's better from a storytelling perspective to leave them in ambiguity. Like, you're asking for it to be explained, and that's totally fair, but like, I don't know if an explanation of exactly how that would have worked with the future people destroying the past without destroying themselves would have made the movie better.
Right. I mean, again, I'm not saying that I'd require an explanation. I'm just saying that there's always a point where like the story has to cheat in order to get the plot going. Like, from my perspective, I don't think that if the people from the future already, know the events that happen, they also have to know that those events cannot be changed. Like, those events, what happens, and and it's just going to happen. I think that there's a version of what
here is like.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't even know their motivations, right?
Like, what is the cheat? Like, his like the main villain's motivation was to kill himself and take everybody with him, thinking that by him doing this, it will be the end all be all. Like, because the question was, if we do this act by him dying and him taking this all with them, because it's like even Neil said, is like it's the grandfather effect, where like you kill yourself in the past and now you don't exist, but it's a paradox. So he thinks the opinion here is that the paradox will cause literal catastrophic destruction across the universe. It will destroy time itself by doing the paradox. And he wants to be able to take everybody with him. So his goal is actual entropy, in the sense that actual end, like everything ends. Like, he doesn't care. He's doing like full Thanos instead of half a Thanos.
What a fucking jerk.
Yeah, he's just so done with living and the world as it is, in a sense that his goal is to destroy everything. I don't know if like he told his like people that was his goal, because I don't know what they're getting out of it.
And I can't imagine they did. I mean, he just pays them like they're mercenaries.
Exactly. Yeah. So they don't know that he just wants to end everything. And
I can't imagine him like trying to describe like time travel to the bald henchman. Like, I can't imagine.
Yeah, and they clearly know what a pincer like would work.
Right. They know. You're right.
They
They
know
know
that
like
much.
the logistics of like how to make it
Right.
work. Yeah.
So
But I don't know if they
as far
actually
as they know,
understand.
they are just, this guy is paying them an insane amount of money, and they have like infinite money because he's getting money from past, future, wherever he's fucking getting it from. So, as far as the main villain goes, all I think that all he thinks is that his theory is that the paradox will destroy everything. And then the other theory could be that it doesn't destroy everything, it still goes on. But they don't want to take the risk because it's just still a theory. Even Neil
Again, it
says
could
it's a
also
theory.
be yeah.
So you're saying that, so in your argument, you're saying that's the cheat. The cheat is that they don't know, right? So therefore, like, I mean, that's all you can do in terms of the story because you can't explain it.
Oh no, the cheat it's that the people from the future are, causing the people in the past to do something. Like, it could be that, they're really just, setting the ball in motion to stop Seder, for them to actually happen. And, the lie is that, they're setting the lie is that, they want to kill themselves, by means of Seder. But
Or it
knowing
could
that
be,
that's going to,
yeah,
knowing that what happens,
right.
already happened, they know that, Sator's, problem does not actually go through. They just want to get that ball in motion for them to actually exist.
Right, exactly. So the other theory is that they are not helping him destroy the universe. They're actually helping to therefore close the loop and continue the events that had previously happened. For all we know, the protagonist is the one sending him the stuff. So it could be that too. But again, like you would have to make the movie longer for that kind of explanation.
Right.
On assumption that it works out that way.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the point is, like, we don't need to know about the people from the future. We don't need to know.
Right.
Yeah, we just need
like
to know
why
the
they're
events
giving
that happen.
him access to this stuff and why they're sending it.
Like I mean, some things are just better left in ambiguity. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole flaw of that classic Matrix Reloaded architect scene, right? Where it's just like he just sits there and
Over-explaining.
explains
Yeah.
everything, and it's just like that. It defeats the purpose. Or even the midichlorian thing from Star Wars, right? It's like,
Right,
why are you explaining the Force?
Yeah.
Like, why are you putting a sci-fi, any sort of sci-fi like biology into this fantasy world? Like, it breaks the entire thing.
Right, because then you start asking more questions too, because it's just
right, and then that's where, I mean, that's where you find plot holes, and you start poking all these things, and then it's just like, I mean, of course, like we're talking about time travel, like it's science fiction at this point, like it's
Right.
You're gonna be able to poke holes in it no matter what angle you look at it from.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly why I kind of didn't want to go that direction because, again,
I mean, it's
low-hanging
okay. I
fruit.
mean, we're talking about time travel movies. This is definitely part of it, right? Where it's just like there's gonna be some stuff that just doesn't make sense, that just gets totally absurd and ridiculous. Like it's just kind of part of it.
So then the question, I guess, maybe like, does anybody felt like that was like any like a problem? Like, I mean, it was a problem, but not too big of a problem. But I mean, one thing for me, it wasn't only a problem. It wasn't necessarily a problem only because Neil was the anchor to knowing how the structure of the science working, and he had faith that it was working, that the rules made sense. So he, like a lot of the scenes would happen when they're manipulating time or using the bullet to catch the bullet and stuff. They were saying, don't think about it, just feel it. And
right, it's about instinct.
Yeah. So then it was interesting because they were then using that as a way to say that that's Neil too, because he doesn't know what's happening, right? He doesn't know the full truth of everything, but he knows that the operation of how time works is still in motion, and he still plays a part
as well.
Exactly.
He said the same thing about instinct, where it's just like, yeah, I've always had a good instinct about like what to do next.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because he only has so much to go on from like the shit that the people from the future are sending him.
Right. So he's going only by instinct, and he's having faith that something's working. I think that let me be okay with that's the mystery part to it, right? Like
right, that's the anchor by which like all the suspension of disbelief is like sort of held in place.
Yeah. So it's almost to some degree like you can almost say that there's a lot of things that you can get away with, because if there's faith of the structure of how it works, then the mystery of it should be okay as well. Like even when they had the ending where they're like they had like they're thinking in time, and then they're like realizing, oh right, nobody knows that anybody had collected this thing at this time because no one here had left alive to tell the story. So then that to some degree that's when they were having that moment of like, should we kill each other? It was like really like, whoa, like just like them having that dialogue was just like you're thinking about the fact that what they don't know is could be the key to the success or unsuccessful
right, because if
situation.
they know and somehow it gets to the people in the future by way of message or email or anything, then the whole operation is dead.
It's fucked, yeah. And then at the same time, it's like he knew that Neil had another purpose to play out, and he let the pieces get given to some what's his name, the guy that plays in Kick-Ass. That's an actor, yeah. He's the one. Yeah. He's the one that's like the leader of their group or something,
right?
Or whatever. Like trained him, I guess. I don't know. Kind of wish I had a little bit more time with him, but but yeah. Oh well. Yeah, it was like the play on having faith in that system was interesting, because I could see how people don't like that, just because it's like,
sure,
what is this, the Force, or what is this, like, using love or whatever, that feeling just guide you. It's almost, I keep thinking about it like it's as if like these people of relying on the science as it works, they have faith in something that they have no control over, which is almost the same thing as just having faith in God, right? It's kind of weird, to think of it that. It got me bothered because it was like a weird take on it, like a really weird take on it, But what about like people's thoughts on how Sator's wife, how that played out? Because for me, I was expecting something very different.
What were you expecting?
I was expecting that she would be dying, and that's like how it stops him from fucking killing himself, I guess. Something like that. Like her faith of like what had happened is what's causing the like she, because she's like a prisoner of this situation. Right. And to save her child and whatnot, like she has to die to stop him from killing himself. But that's the thing that was kind of confusing to me at first, was that if he dies, then he causes the bomb to go out. I don't know. Like that part was probably the most confusing. If anybody has like thoughts on that.
Well, it was almost like a dead man switch, right? Where like he has it like somehow hooked to him, so that it was, the moment he dies, like it just like blows up no matter what. So like just going on what you expected to happen for her to like die, which would for whatever reason make like Sator stop in his tracks. I feel like that would, the thing is like Sator was like, obviously he was all in. Like he was like, I'm doing this. We can bring our son back for like one nice moment, so that his last moment on Earth isn't like something terrible. It's a nice moment with his parents when we're all together, but I'm still going to do it. Like, I'm still going to fucking do it. Like but it needs to be nice. So I don't know. That didn't bother me. I didn't really even think of it like that, I guess. Especially because like I definitely, sort of the way that you sort of could see the Neil twist coming, that it was like him the whole time. Like I could see the cat thing, like because like her name is Kat, and like I saw when they show it like in the first scene where she's like talking about like, oh yeah, when we were on the yacht in Vietnam, I saw the woman jump off. I'm like, that's her. Like that's totally her somehow. I don't know how it's her, but that's her. Like because that's a Nolan thing. That's such a Nolan thing
right.
where it's like he tells his stories non-linearly, and then he'll show a flashback or a quick flash in a person's like mind, and then that'll be something that happens later that connects everything. And so I was like, that's definitely her. And so it made sense to me that like she would kill him, and then that would be her freedom. And that would because she was saying like, when I saw the woman jump off the boat, like I admired that freedom. I admired like that she could just leave him, that she could like go as she pleases, whereas I'm stuck here. So yeah, I kind of figured that would be her arc. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I mean that point didn't bother me particularly. What about anyone else? Did that point bother you, or do you have any other like sticking points that like just like wrinkled the story in any way, aside from the ones that we've already gone over?
Like I said, my first impression was before the story started to develop was just that what caused the reversal was the materials, and then just seeing that it was just the way they handled time travel and just saying like, oh, it's just different trajectories of time that were moving it due to the turnstiles, and showing once it got to the point where it showed the turnstiles, it was like, okay, this is becoming less of a mystery about the time travel and reverse people, because at first you think like, oh, these are people from the future attacking, and then the reveal where it's like it was actually just a protagonist just moving in inverted time. But it, like we were talking about all these time travel conventions, and really I don't see it as that strange or that different. It's just that normally time travel is plot point go to point, but here it just makes you work for moving to the point.
Right.
It just shows like, rather than being in the DeLorean traveling backwards in time and watching the counter, it's like you're moving backwards in time, but this is without the wormhole. This is being with the rules of reverse time. It's like, okay, it's not really all that different, but I like how granular the rules were, saying like, look, it's not easy moving backwards in time, but you just have to relearn some things and it will come to you.
Right.
It's like, okay. I mean, I honestly didn't mind that too much. It did, just the way events were going, it's like, I don't really know how to think of that. I mean, just the best I could say is that it's not an easy mode time travel, especially for solving the solutions, like, getting Kat to recover from the gunshot wound, for example. It's like keep her in those inverted spaces just so she could keep healing. But I mean, it made enough sense for what it was. It's just, I guess the one part I wasn't too clear about was just the end game, because they were describing all this stuff about why are people from the future sending stuff back. That I get. Seder I kind of get, because I mean, if you're an arms dealer, the world is kind of gray. You're making your money on that. So your moral compass isn't necessarily going to be like, I don't know, you're not exactly going to be like the Papa John's guy going like, oh, we sell guns and we make family. No.
I mean, yeah, like when he first finds the gold, like in the fucking radiated area as his younger self, like we see him kill the other dude, right? Like we see him be like, just like, oh, like they both see the gold, and he's like, without hesitation, he just kills the other dude. So like the people from the future, like they picked that guy for a reason. Like they know who he is.
Yeah. just were the people from the future just testing to see if ending it all would work? Or
I mean, exactly. Who knows? Actually, the thing you brought up, actually, that there is one thing that kind of bothered me when you brought it up in terms of like the cat, like her like healing and stuff, like in that sort of slice of like, just like sort of unaffected time, or time where it's just like not being affected by like the inversion or anything. Like that actually kind of bothered me, because they did it again on like the boat, where it's just like they sort of just come through like almost like a hazmat like type of plastic like divider, and like it's just like it's just fine in there. I'm like, how does that work? Like, it's not like this isn't COVID where it's like
the plastic somehow
okay, like
inverted
like
time doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, this is protecting you from like time. Like that was definitely weird. Because the turnstile thing, I can get that. Like I can get behind that idea, right? It's an actual device that's like, however it's doing it, it's somehow like it's sending you back, and like it's a device that's working in a certain way, but like
it's also changing your trajectory at that point in time. So
it's sending you back or forward, whichever way you're going, and that's why like you have to like look at it right before you get in to make sure that you're getting out. Otherwise, you don't get in because it won't work. But that was the thing about that like sort of plastic divider thing, where I was just like, but that doesn't work on those same sort of mechanics, right? Where it's like how did they know that was going to work? Like how did they test that out, right? Where it was like the divider will protect you from the effects of time outside, because we see like the boat is like going backwards and stuff as they're going like back to the airport a week earlier and stuff, and I don't know, like it is definitely another one of those things where it's like it's a suspension of disbelief. But that's one where it's like, unlike with the Neo thing, where in like the way he is an anchor, and you can sort of that's what like you can get behind the suspension of disbelief with that. The divider thing was just sort of one where I was just like, I mean, I guess I'll go with it. Like I don't feel like they don't need to explain it, but there's no anchor there in the same way, where it's like that one's a little, they're playing that one a little fast and loose.
Was it the plastic divider causing time not to go through? I thought it was just for the air, because like they have to use the gas masks, so they
but that's what I mean. Like, but then like, how were they like? Because they were going like on the boat specifically, like they were going back, and it like wasn't affecting them in the same way, right? Like, because when he goes out on the freeway scene and he has to wear the gas mask and stuff, so that, and you're seeing not only how he has to like he's driving the car, and like the handling is different, and he can't get it right. And I was just wondering like how does that, like, because obviously the plastic divider helps them with the air, but like how does it help them with everything else? Like how does it help with them with all the other effects of time travel? Like them just sitting there on the boat, like how are they able to like walk correctly and like like do all the like what I mean? Like it's just like, I don't know. That I guess that
plastic. You can find it at any wall.
Exactly, yeah.
Brenda. Brenda?
Got
are you
bored.
there?
I mean, I would get bored too.
Hey, sorry, I'm like reading some stuff.
So do you have time warping plastic?
Time warping plastic. I have Warbler.
Do you have any time? Can you make a time? Reversal mask?
Ooh. Haley, yeah.
You get the sneezes back into you.
What'd you think of
It would be worse though. Then you would like breathe in the COVID, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that like not protect you from like the COVID outside?
It's just like a mesh. Yay!
So yeah,
This one's-
what'd you think of Tenet? How would you rank it?
I mean,
Nolan films.
I liked it. It was entertaining. There's a lot of clashes of different time travel theories on the movie that I think, in my opinion, are not concise. Like they don't stick to one. I mean,
Right.
there's like so many. I mean, like I'm just reading now. There's time travel. There's like basically if you're a time travel doctor, or if you leap in time, or there's one which is called this I think it's through this philosopher, or I guess science person, Putnam, regarding about how you step into a time machine, and then he sees time pass and he steps out, but only for like 10 minutes time passes. And it says for people outside the time machine, things proceed differently, but observers see that a time machine suddenly appears out of nowhere.
Right.
So it depends if you're like stuck in time and you see in it loop, or if you just jump from one time to another without seeing anything at all.
Right.
And there's also this other scientist. I think his name is pronounced Goodell, I think. There's also time travel that you travel. Let's say you hop on a rocket ship, and let's say you travel for some time, and you actually literally go to the future or go to the past. Like basically, do not disappear. You're basically, or not turning back time, but basically, like it's like if we were to travel all the way to, let's say, outside our solar system. It will take maybe you could travel, and it basically, if you reach that destination, that timestamp is like 2.5 billion years away, when it's actually not, because of the distance that you traveled.
Right.
And then there's also, it's almost like the same with Einstein, that it's basically if you fly on a ship and it goes on a high speed, and it says when you return to Earth, certain effects predicted by this, I guess, special theory of relativity, is only a small amount of time has passed, and the person has aged, while a great deal of time has passed. At Earth, like they say, like if you travel for like 10 minutes, it's almost like what was it, Ant-Man and the Wasp? I was just watching it yesterday, about the quantum, I guess area or whatever, where he's stuck in there for 5 minutes.
Oh, the quantum realm, right?
But it could, the quantum realm. But when he gets out, it's been 5 years.
Right.
Yeah. So there's so many different, I guess, theories about time travel, and it's just that the movie doesn't really stick to one. It kind of like takes one piece from here and there. And I think for me that's what's confusing about the movie, because I mean there's some people that see time travel as a linear line, and some people see it as multiple lines. Right. Like did they really go back in time in that same timeline, or did they jump into another timeline?
Right. That's not they're not going with the multiverse type of way of explaining.
Yeah, so I mean, I wish I could have explained that, like saying like, hey, we're going back in the same timeline, or at least mention something like that, instead of saying, hey.
It might have to do with what I remember Carlos kept on mentioning, that this kind of way of explaining timeline is that once it's done, it's already done. Like there's nothing you can do, and it's static. There's no.
Yeah, there's a theory also. There's that basically that Where is it?
Which
I'm reading an article from
plays
Stanford.
into the whole faith aspect, right? So if you have faith that the rules of the time works the way they think it does, then they just have faith that, like Neo especially, like he like literally says, I have faith that, the world works the way it does. And he'll just.
Yeah, I mean, like it's jumping into this is like it's like so many theories from all these different scientists. I mean, like, there's the one where there's, like, the backwards, I guess, travel, like, if you travel back in time, where, I mean, basically, like, if you change something in time, it will change your future. Mm-hmm. But there are some theories that if you travel back in time, you can't change anything. It will happen. You can't, you won't influence what's going to happen. Like, it's basically saying, I think it was saying that you can you can't influence what has happened, but you can, I think, what did or will happen or something like that. Right. I mean, like, it's only like you can only influence it. You can't change it. And it depends if that past time it's gonna go according to that timeline that was already made, or if it's gonna change some, I guess, slightly, somewhat, with with the new influence and the of you probably being there or causing something.
Like, there's a few ways that, for example, different movies like tackle time travel, and this is there's the Back to the Future one where you go into different timelines, and those and you actually
that's
create
basically like Looper, the movie Looper.
Yeah,
is basically he goes back in time and kills his younger self and he disappears. That's it. So basically, and then with with Back to the Future, it's he basically did change his outcome. He was able to touch that timeline.
Right, but I mean, but that's the thing. Like, Back to the Future is like a little contradictory in terms of the way its time travel works as well, because he went back and made sure that his parents got together, but obviously he changed things, like you were saying, and like they got together in a different way, which when he gets back to 1985,
it will happen. It's just it's different, yeah. It's
but he changed it because now there's a world full of Biff,
But that's the thing, like, is that because I watched them this weekend to like sort of prepare for this, and I was like, I haven't watched the movies in a while, and I was looking at that. I'm like, is it one timeline or is it multiple? Because
that's what I was asking myself too during watching Tenet. I'm like, are they jumping in the same? Are they sure they're in the same timeline? Or they could be in timeline number 3 and not timeline number 1.
Right.
I mean, yeah, and that's the thing about Back to the Future is that when he goes back and changes it, and his parents are different, and like when he gets back to 1985, and then now his father is like confident, and he's not like a pushover, and Biff is like his servant now, and all this shit. It's like, is that a different timeline? Because then in the second one, they actually do go to the different timeline, right? When they go to 2000, I mean, when they go to the future, 2015, and then old Biff takes the almanac back to his younger self in 55, and then they get back to 85, and it's been affected by by that, and it's the alternate timeline, right? And it's like fucked up, and Doc does the classic, like, okay, here's time, and here's where we are. It's like, and it's like an alternate 1985. That's a different timeline. So, like, is it the same one or is it a different one? And so it definitely does contradict itself in that way. Because
yeah, for sure. Like, for example, on the very first movie, like, even if his parents don't bone in the past, doesn't mean that he should disappear because it comes from a completely different timeline. So honestly, he shouldn't really care if his parents bone. What a thankless task.
I think for me, like, for Back to the Future, regardless of what he did, it's always going to happen that his parents are always going to be together.
Yeah.
Always. Like, it doesn't matter like how much you change, is always inevitably gonna happen. There's never gonna be a timeline where Marty's mom, right, is gonna marry someone else, because remember in that timeline where Biff had that. No. Remember that timeline where Biff was all rich, like, Trump and everything?
Yeah, he ended up killing
She was married to the father, and the father passed away.
So
regardless, even if he died.
So she technically...
Yeah, so there was...
You're saying she technically did marry him
still married
in that time.
But it turned out differently.
Yeah.
But it turned out differently.
Yeah. Right. It's always gonna happen.
Right.
It doesn't matter how, it could be that one timeline they meet at a cafe, one timeline they meet at a restaurant, one timeline they meet at a stadium. It's always gonna happen.
Right. So I think did anybody see that that in the Tenet fight scenes were actually choreographed with them fighting backwards?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And that the Sator, the actor that plays Sator, with the fake Russian accent, he had to say those words backwards.
Say it backwards. Yeah.
Can you imagine having to tell people to fucking do that?
Insane, dude.
That's so ridiculous. That's so hard. What the fuck?
For sure.
Oh man, I feel bad for all of them. That's so much work. Jesus.
Well, you know, that's exactly. I bet that a lot of those actors were like, I thank God I just have to act, and I don't have to worry about the structure of this movie because fuck that. I'm not here to make the differential equation. I'm here to fake cry in front of people.
And Kat, she's fucking tall as fuck.
I know. I was gonna say. No, we were always commenting. Like, oh my god, she's like taller than every. She's like towers over every
dude,
single guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I looked her up. She's like 6 foot something. I think she's 6'7"
or something. Yeah.
Or she's somewhere around there. Yeah.
Man, that must be hard to like. Kind of hard to get roles. I'd assume. They would have to like.
She's just taller than the guys.
Yeah.
If you type cat Tenet, it autofills.
That's when the movie magic happens. You know, it's like they use the forced perspective.
6'2". I mean, that is tall. That is tall. Yeah. By far not the tallest girl I've ever seen, but it is pretty tall.
I mean, even with the forced perspective, you could tell she's tall.
Yeah.
Because the way her arms are and her legs just long, you know, and her torso, you could tell that she's tall. Even if they do the forced perspective,
right?
Of trying to the way I guess when they put her, I guess when she pulled out the gun on was it Seder, right? I mean they had her at a really far distance compared to him.
He was right. So
and the way that they there could be eye to eye, but the way they set it up is almost making it seem like they're the same height, but they're not. You can tell.
You imagine
how tall?
Because Kenneth Branagh is like a short dude, and she's like super tall, so they had to be like basically halfway across the room from each other for that.
Man.
Why? I like the idea. Yeah, I like the idea of having a taller woman towering over the man.
Yeah.
He has they did. I mean, it's not like they hid it, right? Like you could tell, like every time they weren't trying to hide it. Like in every scene, even where she's not wearing like heels or something, like she's clearly taller than the protagonist. Like every time she's with him. So it's I mean, it's not. I don't know. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. It's not a big deal. It's just interesting to point out. All right. What about the fan theory about Neil? Has anybody heard it?
Yeah. That he is Kat's son.
Max, yeah.
Max, yeah.
Has anybody else have heard, about like the theories why? I mean,
not really the theories, but when he said that you already met me, I'm like, oh shit, that's her son.
Yeah.
There was that moment, or anything going like, oh, that's confirmed.
Well, I didn't hear any theories, but I suspected that not really. It's kind of the same thing D'Angelo was saying. It's not really. I didn't have anything tangible to say. Oh, this is why. But I was like, okay, Mac. Like we know that that the protagonist creates Tenet in the future. We know that he's like the head of the organization and that he and Neil are gonna have like grand adventures, right? And like in the future. And like I was just looking at like, okay, like Max is like a certain age and Neil's is a certain age. And I was just like, okay, like it would make sense that like, especially as the son of Kat and stuff, that he would eventually like recruit him. Like it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I had the same feeling too. Like even though there's like nothing super obvious that can connect the character.
There's intent. It's the classic Nolan thing again, where it's like there's no like concrete clues at all, like at all. Like, and it's definitely intentional. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. One of the other theories is that Max is short for Maximilian, and he changed his name to Neil because the last 4 letters of Maximilian is Leon, but like backwards or whatever, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. That sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess.
because of
And
the
that's not how
play
you
on.
spell that name, but yeah.
I know, right? Again,
Hey, man,
it's
this
a
is a little
it's
bit
a
of a
name
stretch,
is
for
Seder.
sure.
yeah. It's a definitely a really like out there, like there is no
I
other
just-
evidence other than what we can assume.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I just assumed that Neil was just a pseudonym he came up with.
Yeah. So yeah, Maximilian with an E. There is. Let's see.
Are there any other like time travel things in like any other movies or shows or games or whatever books that like people that either anyone here like either likes or dislikes the way that they sort of portrayed time travel?
Terminator.
I will say that compared to Tenet, there are some time travel like bits that I actually hate. This is a children's movie. I didn't see all of it, but the last Mimsy. I like to know what makes time travel fatal to people. And because it sounds like it would be interesting to explain it, going like, oh, we have to send our dolls that are powered by Intel. Intel makes fucking children's dolls, but the fucking CPU company going like, wow, you guys that are right there sending a fucking sentient doll back in time, going like, oh, well, you see, children can only see these things because adults can't because their minds are too closed. And, there's a bunch of children's movie bullshit in it, but mainly we can't send people back into the past or else they'll die. It's like, wow, first off, how did they test that? And second off, was there a return device to test the time travel? Because you send someone in a time machine and they die, you just have a time machine that's stuck in the past. So your only way of knowing is if the time machine comes back somehow. And that just raises so many questions. It's just like
that's interesting because that's like the opposite of Terminator, when in Terminator only organic material can travel to the past. In that one, you're saying that only inorganic material can travel to the past or travel in time.
I know. Right? It's funny too because another thing that inverts that is Earthbound. Because Earthbound has this point in the climax where you're supposed to travel back in time, but the thing is, life gets destroyed in the process, so you can't travel back in time as a person. You have to transfer your brain into a robot body and then use the time machine. And I'm like, wait, so also, how did they test that? Because in Earthbound, there's talking mice and stuff, so even if you tested that out on some mice, aren't there some moral complications about that? Going like, I'm going to travel back into the past, come back, oh shit, Mr. Jesus is dead. So, yeah, it's just like how I don't know. Destructive time travel is just one of those things I don't really like. This is just time travel stories tend to have a little bit more whimsy in them, and even though we just discussed a work that had a long way path for traveling back in time that was seen more on screen, at least I respect that because you're still active. It's just different rules.
Right.
I don't know. I think one of the things that bothers me more it's just Terminator, how every single time that they try to like every movie happens, but it really does nothing to the overall events of the world. Like the machines are always gonna take over and and blow shit up, and they're always gonna send the Terminator back in time.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like what Brenda was saying though, where it's like it's gonna happen one way or another, and they even acknowledge it in Terminator several times, where he's like, "Oh, we stopped Judgment Day, right?" And he's like, "No, Judgment Day is inevitable. You just prolonged it, right? Like you just sort of drew it out, but it's still gonna happen."
But see, that's the thing that kind of goes antithetical to the second movie, where Sarah Connor has that mantra of saying that there's no such thing as fate. The future is what we make. It's why I think that all the other Terminator movies are inferior, not just because they don't adhere to I mean, not only do they not adhere to some sort of central theme, but they're also pretty much just cash cows.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean,
they're cash cows.
even the first one.
No, I'm saying after
Like
After
after,
two,
yeah,
after T2. I
yeah,
think that
I mean,
T1, T2, they're great movies. It should just end at there. Like
I
anything
mean,
after it,
sure, yeah.
they just try to find some. They're just trying to find some sort of way to like continue the franchise.
I mean, it's definitely contrived after two for sure. I don't. I mean, it's. I don't know that they. I don't know that they really veer away from those central themes, though. Like, I mean, it's kind of the same thing every movie, and that's the issue. But it's. Yeah, I don't know that they're really breaking the rules that were set up in like the first two movies, though.
yeah.
Like,
Honestly, I think like Terminator, like they're adhering to like there is only one like timeline, and they were trying
yeah,
to just sell that, but the latest one kind of says like, well, it's more like the same thing happened, but in a different perspective, where it isn't Skynet, but it's still like an AI that takes over,
But
which
that's
is
actually, you know what?
a
You know what?
different
I take
timeline.
back what I said because the most recent one, what was it called?
yeah,
Dark
Dark Fate.
Fate.
Yeah,
Dark Fate. That one.
I enjoyed it a
That
lot.
one actually does kind of break the rules. I think that one actually because that one's almost like an alternate timeline thing, where
Yeah.
it's like it's
Yeah.
not Sarah Connor in the future.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's the only one that really does that. Like 'cause
Right.
the other ones sort of stick to the same thing, where it's like, okay, Sarah Connor dies of leukemia, but she trains John Connor first, and he becomes, whatever. But that one is different. So
yeah. That
yeah,
the Dark Fate one,
Ah.
it does it to what was it called? To like basically retcon the other ones.
yeah.
Like, oh, those don't exist. Only Terminator 1, 2.
Yeah.
Which is essentially what they wanted to try and do. But it
But
also
then stop
still...
making movies.
Yeah, I know,
Stop
right?
making the
Yeah, it's
movies.
just-
Like it's just like, oh yeah, we want to retcon it, but you didn't make anything better. You didn't add
Yeah.
anything to the franchise here. Like it's just like a different story that you've come up with that further like fucks up your idea of time travel.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's just like they're just convoluted, or not even convoluted, but just their stupid fucking the logic of the Terminators in the future. Let's just send back 1 million Terminators to every moment in John Connor's life. We'll get him eventually. It's just like that's the only thing. That's your
Just
only
send them all at
strategy.
once,
Like
bro.
really?
Why
Like,
don't
you
we
didn't
why
come
don't
up-
we just send them all at once? What, are you crazy and be actually efficient at this?
Yeah, exactly.
What am I, a machine?
So ridiculous, yeah. It is pretty ridiculous. I feel like if they had the idea of what Tenet did with timeline being that, again, was like, and we're talking about like when I watched the Christian Bale one, where it was like it would have made sense that the reason why he was able to be the supposed chosen one to be, the one that like that they need to kill because they know that that he defeats them, and that's like the big thing, the big reason for it. But how does it that he defeat him? And it was always like, but
Right.
we didn't understand like how, like the way the movie explained it was bad in the sense that I didn't understand how he defeats them or how he's even a threat. And
Right.
it would have made sense when I saw it. I was thinking it would have made sense that he knows that his death doesn't come until a certain point, meaning like their idea of time
Right.
works where it's just it's definitive. Like you cannot move time. Like it's just
So
it's
he
in there.
knows he can't die, which
Right.
allows him to take
Allows him-
risks all the time.
Exactly, which is why like maybe that knowledge itself, because he has full faith on what he thinks he knows, maybe based on what Sarah like Connor says to him. So it's almost like he's putting full faith on like that, knowing that, and maybe because of that is what causes him to eventually die, get killed by like a Terminator that looks like the Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator 2. So because of the whole like father figure issue, that makes sense, right? Like he walks into that situation, and maybe even to like what the rumor was that there was an alternative script where Christian Bale does die, like his
it was
fate.
the original ending.
Right.
Yeah.
The original ending was that he does die from the that moment of him thinking that he's about to that he's being like he's like that father figure is back again, and he gets
and that
killed by
moment
him.
of shock is what
Right.
kills him. Yeah.
And that moment of shock is what kills him, and then the other character who is I forget the actor's
Half
name.
and like the hybrid.
Yeah, he's like a hybrid. Yeah,
human. Like yeah.
And he takes on the like it's kind of freaky the way they
Where they
explain
like graft his skin. They graft John Connor's skin. However, that
and he
would work.
pretends to be John Connor.
You're right. So it's still John Connor who ultimately defeats the Terminators.
As far as everybody knows, but nobody else knows
except for his wife and like the surgeon or whatever.
Exactly.
But like, yeah, it's. I mean, and as ridiculous as that is, like that would have been a way better ending for that movie because. And it would have there was supposed to be a trilogy like that showed like that and in the middle of the war and then like the end of the war in the last one, which obviously never happened. But like the idea of like it being John Connor but not being John Connor and like John Connor actually now being like this hybrid Terminator human thing, like I feel like just that alone could have lended to some cool story things that could have made more sense to why like John Connor was so important and why he was a threat. Exactly. Because like he was made by them, but he's not one of them. So he has an insight that's unique. That's very unique. Like no one else has that perspective that he has. Whereas John Connor, just like regular John Connor, like, I mean, I guess he's a badass guy, but like there's nothing that actually makes him special. Like, and that's sort of what like Dark Fate and like these other movies or like Dark Fate specifically, where it's just like, so we never needed John Connor in the first place, is what you're telling me? Like this just other random girl
really
can
doesn't make
just
sense.
be Sarah Connor and John Connor all at once? Like, then what is the point? Like, so that's another reason why that movie.
We don't get a character buildup of like why they do it. You know, like why are they such a threat? And then it doesn't make sense how the Terminators are like, okay, then why are you doing this? Like, if they were never a consequence, why do this, right? Like you probably like for an AI, you'd figure that it would have the plan, right? It would understand all the possible ways of, dealing with this scenario, and I mean, it would be interesting to have like the irony is that they actually like they made their own destruction, which is by making that I guess quote unquote spy robot cyborg guy that he made from a prisoner. But yeah, and if they took the fact that in some sense that sticking to the rule of you can't change the timeline, but the perspective of what we know is different, could be different. And maybe that's what gives John Connor the edge, because he knows what the future is like, or he supposedly knows. So, and I felt like that was a little bit like how Neil was working too, because he had faith in the system that was established in that version of how we explain time.
But he's also coming from the future, so he knows what happened.
Right, and he's also putting faith of what he doesn't know until he does find out.
Because he's using he's relying on instinct, right? Like he's relying on however the like laws of this time travel universe work.
Right. Yeah, I mean.
Okay, something that's not clear to me. Are only objects able to, travel back, or is that something that is that an ability that people can do, or that only special people can do?
So in Tenet, are you talking about the items?
Well, no, I'm talking about Neil. How does he go back?
Oh, how does he travel?
I
think it's the same way that they travel, like back to the airport and stuff.
Right. Like he literally is living life backwards.
He's walking backwards.
Yeah, literally.
He's like flying around the world backwards so that he like turns it back.
Yeah. Can you imagine that though? You're like living 30. Can you imagine this? You're living 20 years, right? So 27. Let's say that you're or 30, like 30, right? But then now you have to travel back in time, but you're still aging, or are you still aging? You know?
Yeah,
I would imagine.
Like you're
yeah.
30 years old, then now you need to go back when you're 20. That's crazy, right? Can you imagine that you have to live another 10 years, but everything's going back in time? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Or are you like Benjamin
God.
Button? You just like become younger.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that is a good question. Will you actually revert your appearance? You know, if you're traveling to a time that you're gonna be 20 years old,
right.
by the time you're traveling, you get there, are you gonna be also 20 years old?
Yeah. Does the molecules in your body go, reverting? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Probably.
it can't.
Or it
no,
can't.
it can't.
Okay.
Because your physics would have, your physics would be reversed. You would be giving back your energy, to the universe. Meaning, like, all the physical processes that happen inside your body will have to, happen backwards. And you'd have a situation like.
I think you're right. Yeah, because you're reversing time. You're not traveling through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's like your physical.
Basically,
your physical body.
Basically, you're rewinding. You're not skipping from one chapter to another.
Right. So it is how we think of it is that you have to, in order to travel through time, you literally have to live through it backwards. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're always aging. That's fucking sucks. So you mean like. So maybe Neil's like been traveling through time. So
it's the same with like Bill and Ted, like when they bring the two princesses over to like the future, right?
Yeah.
They're basically the same age that they were when they were, I guess, in the 1500s.
Yeah.
They're the same age.
Okay, didn't we see Bill and Ted, the newest one?
No, but I am so happy that Bill and Ted made it in the discussion for time travel.
That one's by far the wackiest.
Yeah.
It's the most bizarre. It's such a stupid movie. and the newest one is just as stupid.
Sure, yeah.
It's like by the time they bring them back to like the future, are they going to be like just dust?
I love it that they use like, we gotta heal the universe by playing music. The sound will save us from the timeline from being destroyed or some shit. Man, that was like, yep, that's Bill and Ted.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh man.
Yeah, I always like that idea because it kind of reminds me of that song by the fact that you never hear the song that heals the universe. Kind of reminds me of like that song, but by Jack Black and Tenacious D, like the tribute, which is about the best song ever. And that this in the song he's not singing the best song ever. He's just singing a tribute to the best song ever.
Right.
Clever way to work around it.
Ever heard? This is a romantic movie. I only seen bits and pieces of this movie, and then I read about it. It's actually with Keanu Reeves. It's called The Lake House. Have you guys heard about that one?
Yeah, in Sandra Bullock. Yeah, I've seen it.
About basically how the freaking postal box is like basically the time travel.
They're sending letters to each other through time. Yeah.
That is interesting.
Pretty interesting, yeah.
It's a romance story, but using this fictional thing. Okay, what about wasn't there something like the time?
Yeah, he's like two.
Wife?
He's like two.
What about that one?
Basically, he's with what is it? With the lake house. He's 2 years behind, and then she's 2 years ahead.
Right.
And it's basically, I would say it's like basically the mailbox is like a time travel machine almost in a way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And like eventually it comes down to like her trying to like she realizes that the thing that you see at the beginning of the movie with the dude getting hit by a bus is actually him, so she has to try to warn him, and it like basically ends up colliding and she ends up saving him. But it's exactly that, where the mailbox is like this is the time travel device.
Can you imagine having to trying to warn yourself people for trying to warn yourself from 2020? It's like, dude, buy a whole bunch of toilet paper. Why?
Or maybe that's the reason why there was no toilet paper, because somebody fucking did it.
Oh man!
Oh, my brain. And Trump was trying to get entropy going.
Did you guys hear about Trump that he called? I think it's the U.S. rep of Georgia,
Yeah,
asking
we were talking
him.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
too.
talked about it. Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay, so the Time Traveler's Wife. I think that's a movie, right? That's another one, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that. I haven't seen it in that time.
I mean, I like the movie. Obviously, some of the things like, it does the thing where like he's bouncing around in different times, but
Basically,
I like
it's almost like a doctor, like a doctor of travel, because he's traveling from one place to another
like
physically.
He can't control it. That's the big problem, right? And
Oh,
then the
that's
funny
true.
thing about this story is too is
Oh
that
yeah, right.
that he also like you can't like tell at some point was it all in his head or not. In the movie near the end, it does like it is not.
Well, it is what he says is a
actually
paranormal genetic disorder
right.
that causes him to randomly time travel. So does that mean that he's gonna time travel out of the mom's womb? It's just gonna go poof, and it's gonna disappear, and then she might not be pregnant, and then like 2 hours later she's pregnant again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Well, actually, an
but they
interesting
play
thing.
on the mental illness problem here too, because like they don't know if this is actually his because in the movie
Yeah.
it progressively becomes more. Wait a minute, maybe it is, and then it just keeps going, and it is just a trippy as fuck. It's really sad too.
Yeah, they did something like that in the Stephen King show.
Ah.
Castle Rock, like where they in the first season where
Castle
like
Rock.
it's kind of an interesting take on dementia where like the old lady has
right?
dementia and like the kid is like she's like, well, I don't know, like sometimes I don't know where I am and I think I'm in like a different time and I don't know exactly where I am, and the kid is basically, he doesn't quite understand it, so he's like, oh, you're like a time traveler, and like you're seeing it from her perspective where like she's zapping back like 30 years and like, but she's obviously like, it's in her head, it's an illness, but like it's a really interesting take on dementia, and like it's sort of a classic sort of Stephen King thing where you take something that's very simple and very tragic like that, but you spin it in a way that has more of a like paranormal, eerie feeling to it. That's pretty interesting though. That's an interesting sort of way to frame it.
That's I've actually I read a book like that as well. That from this science fiction writing called Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, he's the book is called Slaughterhouse-Five, and I think it's like published back in the 60s. And it's precisely about that. He has a traumatic experience in the war, and in the future, he tells he's writing a book about his experience as a person who's he describes it as being disentangled with time. So that every time that he his specific timeline has always been jumping back and forth between different, his consciousness has been, his consciousness is disentangled from his timeline, so his entire life has happened, but the times in which he's conscious happen at different times in in different epochs of his life. But yeah, at the very end of the story you kind of find that tragic, hey, spoilers alert on a 50-year-old book, that yeah, he's just been suffering from dementia this whole time. It's really
and also Amazon has a series. Carlos, you watched it, right? It's what was it called again? It was animated, but it's like rotoscoped.
Yes.
Shit.
What is
Can't remember the name of it.
It's
something or
Undone.
Undone. I think it is Undone.
Yes.
Let me look at it.
It's Undone, right?
That does another thing too, where it's the same concept. It's, you can't tell if it's the take on dementia or actually time travel. And as the series keeps going, it becomes more apparent that it is time travel.
In that one, it's more, there's definitely something supernaturally happening, and it's less ambiguous that it is, or at least in my opinion, it's less ambiguous that it is something, so supernaturally happen.
Yeah, they got renewed for a second season, but we don't know when that second season is going to come out. It came out in 2019. Has the actress that was
Alita, Battle
yeah,
Angel.
yeah, in Arlita.
Hmm?
And also like it has what's his name that plays Soul Goodman.
Oh
Better Call Saul.
yeah, because that's her dad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Correct. And he's a pretty important character in the series.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like that use of time travel too, because like it kind of plays into what we're talking about, where it's enough of it is convincing you it could be this, but the mystery of it is still there. So like you can accept the zaniness of it, of the wild things that may happen. So yeah, I think again, it's again, Nolan does an amazing job of making sure that things need to be a mystery because like it needs to stay a mystery, and let the audience come up with their own like conclusion to it. Much like how Joker's past worked in Dark Knight, where it's you just don't know what the truth is with the guy.
Right.
But something is terrible in his past. And that's all you need to know because it's pushing the rest of the plot forward. And it gives more to the character too. But anyways, yeah. Does anybody have any closing arguments or like anything else they wanted to add, like time travel and other kind of things, or yeah?
Well, I definitely want to time travel to a point where I fully grasp everything in the movie. But I don't know if that's actually possible. I'll probably have to break a couple of laws of physics.
All right.
Well, I want to say that there's not necessarily anything wrong with wanting the, let's say, the simplified form of theatrical time travel, where it's just stop and rewind physics.
Sure.
Stop, rewind, stop, rewind, and reshoot physics, where it's like the same events are as they are, but you can change stuff in the middle. There's nothing wrong with wanting that kind of plot. I will say that, other time travel systems that try to bring a bit of, I don't want to say reality, but let's say balance into the picture that keeps it from being too broken and too convenient. Still valid stories to follow, because I think they're just reminders saying like, look, if you have a time machine, you just have to understand that there are risks to having a time machine. You can't just go willy-nilly and go like, oh, I'm going to change all this stuff so my life gets more awesome and no problems happen ever. And everything in the future is just that plus that. It's like, no, you might change some events. You might change some things for the worse. It's not always going to be used to your benefit. If you had a time machine, you should probably think wisely about having it.
Yeah, I mean, I think time travel. Yeah, I think actually something like Lost deals with time travel in a really cool way, where it like, so in the 5th season they go back in time to the 70s, and like the two characters are talking about like, okay, Hugo's like, okay, so if we die here, like we we're never born, right? And Miles is like, no, like this is your future. Like, I mean, this is your present. So like you're born in 1985, and then 20 years later you time travel back here to the 70s, and you die in 1975, but that is your present, right? Like that is your present. Mm-hmm. It's all this. It works that way. And the way that they sort of weave it into the story is that this character named Eloise Hawking, who we meet in the 3rd season, she's an old woman, and she's like this lady who's sort of giving out like mysterious information to one of the other characters. And we meet another character later on named Daniel Faraday, who's a scientist, and we find out that Daniel Faraday is her son, and we're seeing like through flashbacks for a long time that for his whole life, she's been emotionally detached from him. Like she loves him, but she is very like, okay, there's a point. Like I'm not gonna be too lovey-dovey with you. Like I'm not gonna really get that close to you. And when they travel back in time to the 70s. and we meet Eloise Hawking when she's like in her 20s. She ends up killing him. Eloise Hawking kills Daniel Faraday, and she looks him in the eye as he dies. And so basically, for all of Daniel Faraday's life, his mother knows that she's the one that killed him. And so that's why she's always been emotionally detached. And like that sort of story point that uses time travel in that way is like, it's super simple, but it's also like really, really effective. Because it brings the emotions in with fucking with like, oh shit, like I'm the one, like I already killed my son like 20 years ago, and then when he's born, I know that I'm going to be the one to kill him, and there's nothing I can do to change it because I already did it in the past, right? Like it's not like I can change it because 20-year-old me did it, not me now. So that's pretty, I always like that. It's always been something that's pretty interesting. And then of course you have stuff like we were talking about it before, but with Looper where it's a little weird, it's a little simpler, and a little, I guess, I mean it's not half-assed, but it's a little more like kind of weird if you compare it to all these other things that we've been talking about, where they sort of think out the time travel and the future and the past like a little more thoroughly, where it's like it is exactly what Brenda was saying, where like at the end he just shoots himself and they both disappear, and it's like,
but
did they think this out too much? Like it's I mean, obviously it's working within the rules of their world that they've established, but like it also is a little, I don't know, it's a little weird to me.
In that movie, it's definitely the point where like, you actually change the timeline,
right?
You don't create an alternate timeline. The things that that happened didn't always happen. On like Tenet is the kind of movie where like, look, everything happened in the movie always happened, like it's there's no there's no changing of anything, where, and something like Back to the Future is like, oh, you create alternate timelines, so you travel to different times. And this one, no, you actually change what happens in the timeline.
But then you have to wonder, like if Joseph Gordon-Levitt's version of Bruce Willis kills older Bruce Willis in that moment, doesn't that like how does everybody who's ever interacted with him, because he was an assassin, like how does everybody who ever killed him, like between those 2 points in time for that character, how are they affected? Like, because like Bruce Willis's character has like killed all these people over 30 years, but then like Joseph Gordon-Levitt kills him in that period of time. Like,
that's what I was saying, that like every,
or like, because like I mean, I guess it works with what you were saying, Carlos, where it's like, I guess he just changes it so those people, I guess, don't die now, and everything that he interacted with during those 30 years, like, I guess just didn't, it just goes on without him interacting with it. But I don't know.
So I mean, again, it's the kind of thing where like pretty much all time travel movies at some point have to cheat, and you have to tell you, it's like, look, don't think about it.
Sure. To some extent, I guess the thing that bothers me compared to something like that, to something like Tenet or Lost or even Back to the Future, is like it is a matter of like, but how big is the cheat, right? Like how big is the suspension of disbelief that I have to, because obviously there is a point where it's like, okay, just don't think about it, but is it a big don't think about it? Is it like a big gap that you're just like, there's a whole room of like plot holes here, but it's fine? Or is it like there's a few things here or there, but I can kind of get past them? I guess it's like the extent of like the don't think about it that's sort of getting
that's true. Whether it's some
oops.
And whether it's something that resolves the plot or something that gets the plot going. Like, you think of Back to the Future too. Like, Doc Brown could have just done the reasonable, thing of just warning her, hey, your kids in the future, they're gonna get in trouble with the law, so keep them away from that. instead of like, hey, go back for, let's travel through time and space, and
Sure.
almost annihilate the entire universe. One is clearly much more interesting than the other.
Right.
It's like Alfred Hitchcock, had to explain. It's like, why don't the people in horror movies ever call the police? It's like, well, because it would be a lot less interesting.
What about what about Heroes? That crappy TV series.
Oh God, Heroes. Why do you have to bring
Crappy after the first season. The first season everyone loved for good
Everybody
reason.
loved the first season,
but
then
it
the
just
second season
fell
and
off of a cliff for the rest of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It fucking nosedived hard. It was like
Yeah.
night and day. It was just like, oh man, I can't wait for the second season of Heroes because the first season was so great, and then you were like, oh man, like what happened here?
Yeah.
Hey, here's a version of time travel we never talk about: the Superman reversing, time by flying around the Earth.
It's awful. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, I mean that one.
No. Thing is, here you go. There's actually kind of an explanation for that. That is that it's not that he's reversing the Earth, from going back. Is that from his perspective, that's what it looks like. But it's actually traveling back in time, because light is the speed limit for the entire universe. The theory is that for a lot of high math that I don't really understand, if you travel faster than the speed of light from a certain point of view, it looks to a different observer as if you're traveling back in time. So
right,
explanation would be that he's actually just traveling back in time because he's actually going faster than the speed of light.
Yeah, but he is, but not the entire Earth. That's what you know what I'm saying.
Well, no, that's exactly it. For it looks
the first
to
line
him as
just
if
said
it's going back.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
to him, but the reality of the situation, not everything else is traveling with
I
him.
think with Superman, it's basically he's rewinding time because he's not jumping from one point to another.
He's not. No, he's.
No, I was arguing the exact opposite.
This is
It's
still
like
not
he's
working.
actually traveling back in time, but to him, it looks like
Yes, to
he's
him.
reversing it.
Yes, only to him though.
Yeah, I know.
And therefore, it's he doesn't actually turn back time, but in the movie he does anyways. Whatever.
But in the movie he does,
well.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh man, you can pull the whole Obi-Wan Darth Vader father thing on me all the time, but that still doesn't work for this.
No, it totally does, because he does travel back in time. It just looks like to him as if it's
exactly. It's just to him.
They're reversing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just to him. It's just to him that it's happening.
Well, yeah, that's how time travel works for everybody else.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it only looks to you as if things are changing. For everybody else, is
Oh, what about how?
But what about the
Or
events
at
that are
point,
playing
the
out on Earth,
Superman
though?
just beats that point, going like, you know what, fuck humanity, deal with your own shit. Lois is dead, and the time that continues from dead Lois timeline is just going to be so screwed for the Superman sequels if the events still play out.
Right.
Oh man, I in a certain point of view, Wonder Woman could have flied and done a lot of stuff in Batman v Superman, but she didn't fly, and then she could have used the lasso. She could have turned something invisible.
She didn't fly because she didn't learn it from Steve Trevor, which only told her, "Oh, you just have to feel the air."
She just forgets. She just forgets that she has these abilities, during the movie. And then in Justice League, she totally still doesn't remember that she could fucking do any of those things. Yeah, okay.
It's the prequel progress problem.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm sure she'll be able to do it in the Snyder Cut. Because the Snyder Cut is just it's totally all the footage that he didn't use. Fucking 4 hours of new footage. It's a new movie. You made a new movie. You retconned your old one and made a new one. Let's just call a spade a spade. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. He's just like, you know what? I gave it to Joss Whedon and I was like, I need to do it again. All over again.
People need more of this movie. That's what the world needs.
We really
another Justice League. Yes.
God. All right. And so, all right. What about Flashpoint? I'm talking not like the potential Flashpoint they're gonna do, but they might. Yeah, they most likely will do that. they'll definitely
Yeah,
they have to pretty much at this rate.
Yeah.
But speaking of all right, we could talk about the comic, but pretty much nobody read the Flashpoint version of it. I think Brenda has, but the animation.
I've only
How
ever
about
seen
that use of time, right? I mean, we could even talk about the Flash series and their use of time travel.
Sure.
Which is multiverse.
Time doubles and such.
Right. Yeah.
That was actually cool. I like that concept. The way that season played out was like bullshit, but like
right.
the idea that like he's like he can like he's taking different points in time, like himself from different points of time, and like you get to see the after result of it, right? Where it's like, okay, he ran so fast that like he made a version of himself that ran so fast that it like blew up or whatever, and then like
wait, he blows up.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly that, but
it's not exactly
much,
that. It's more
not worth
complicated.
Explaining, honestly.
Yeah,
so basically, like we get to see the aftermath of that double in time. That is him, but then that double becomes basically the villain. It's pretty interesting. The idea of a time double is interesting, but yeah, there's a lot of cool ideas in that show. They don't really work out most of the time.
Yeah,
but yeah.
That series
cool.
really knows how to like just constantly fuck with time. Like
that first season was real good. I like that first
good,
season
some
a lot,
bad.
But yeah,
and they really, it's kind of one of those things they know they're kind of they know what they're doing.
Oh sure,
like,
I mean
they're very aware of them. Like just this is time travel. We get it.
I mean, it's very much exactly.
Add some
what
more
we're talking
magical
about.
elements to it.
Just don't think about it. It's a comic. Like it's comics. That's it. Like it's just like, whoa, how does this work? Comics. That's it. Move on.
Reasons. Yeah, for sure, for reals. Like yeah. How about the one where it's the what was that weird Reaper thing that like because they were fucking with time with so much it goes and hunts them or something.
Oh right. Yeah.
So
like
there's like
what is the Black Flash or something? It's like
sorta. Well, okay. In the comic, it's there's this comic character called Zoom, and he's kind of like hunting people because they're fucking with time. But no, like
It's he's like the thing that hunts people in the Prince of Persia, the Warrior Within.
Yes. Oh God, it's great that you mentioned that. That's another time travel kerfuffle thing that we can talk about. But anyways. No. So in the series, there's actually like this Green Reaper-esque thing that's chasing time travelers. Through the Speed Force. Yeah. And of course, Speed Force is just another way of saying this is time travel land.
Yeah.
It's basically it is the Black Flash.
Yeah. But he wasn't doing that because they were like doing it because they were fucking with time, right? He was doing it because of his own. Because wasn't Zoom a person? Like he was a person, wasn't he?
Yeah, Zoom is a different person.
Yeah, he's like a different person, right? Yeah. But I remember, wasn't there like this weird Green Reaper thing that would be showing up later and like they can kill you or something? And it took out one of the other alternate Flashes.
Yeah.
Cause like basically they were going so far as to mess with time that he would go back in time and have another version of Flash show up in his timeline, and so he would have.
The Reaper was there as like basically a course correction because they were fucking.
They were fucking with it so much. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what that thing is. It's again.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea of like because I've heard that before where it's like it's this idea that like time is an organism and like it has these mechanisms to like protect itself if you fuck with it too much. That's a really cool idea that I haven't seen explored too much.
Rick and Morty? There's that dude, that weird looking like with no eyes. Brendan, you know what I'm talking about, right?
You mean the time cops? Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Cops.
They're kind of like time cops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The testicle dudes?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. But
I
know what you mean.
They basically look like walnuts to me. Like fucking like the actual
like walnuts is what they look like to me.
There's a certain kind of walnut, a fleshy walnut.
A fleshy kind of walnut.
Exactly. The hairy kind of walnuts.
Thing to bring up.
Yeah. Those guys are hilarious. Okay, all right. Speaking of Time Cop.
The 95 Van Damme
We've
classic.
come to it.
Sporting his
You know
ball
what?
and
I haven't
all.
seen that. I have not seen that movie.
Good for you.
Well,
To
you know, you
Yeah.
don't need to.
You're
I
doing
think
well
to-
in life. You
I
made
think
good
just means
decisions.
you are a
I
person.
think it was pretty ridiculous where you couldn't touch, your time. That's
Yeah.
Tenet was
no,
kind of
wait.
doing that.
Tenet said that.
Yes,
Yeah, I was
exactly.
gonna say.
They don't
The
know
annihilation
if
thing. Yeah.
annihilation, yeah, where it's a paradox. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and they do the same thing in Back to the Future. They do that in pretty
Exactly.
much every
yeah.
like
Right.
time
Except they
travel
actually
thing.
do touch each other in Tenet. I guess that you could say they didn't
I
because
know,
they
right?
were wearing clothes.
Sure.
But they
that
were in
is true,
Tenet?
Yeah.
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 Well, they did, but they remember that he was wearing a suit.
Yes.
He was
So
on
they
tactical.
so
Again,
they're
it goes
talking
back
about
to, like,
physical.
They need an
has to be
actual
flesh to
skin
flesh,
to
I
skin,
guess.
like
Skin-to-skin
contact.
contact?
Yeah.
But that's exactly it. Like, I mean, but that suit was with him when
Yeah.
he, reversed. So, I mean, those are, also reversed, atoms. So why
but-
don't they annihilate with each other? It's like the same thing that,
Right.
Apollo was
I
saying. It's
see
like,
what you
but how
mean.
does the film of, plastic, stop time travel?
Yeah, for sure. I see what you mean, for sure. I figured, like, I can't remember if they mentioned had to been skin contact, because, like, the actual thing that is going backwards in time cannot collide into the same thing that's also going forward in time. So maybe the clothing wasn't in contact with itself. Meaning, if you had that suit contact with the forward time version of that suit, then theoretically,
I see.
the paradox would happen. That's my only logic. That's all I can say.
theory.
I don't think it. Again, I agree because I had that problem. Because the entire which is why I want to bring up Time Cop, is because I was thinking that myself.
That old Jim.
Yeah, no,
Right,
for sure.
because,
You
like-
don't want to give yourself
The
a
definitive
high.
time travel movie.
I mean, yeah, in that movie they annihilate each other by touching each other. So
Right.
you go back in time and you're like, "Hey, high five, Carlos, future
Yeah.
Carlos. Hey, high five." But
I
past
wish I could
Carlos.
annihilate the memory of watching Time Cop. That would be
Just
pretty great.
watch the movie again, but backwards, and that'll do.
Then it'll make sense.
You just
It
go
might
back in
actually be
time, you're
better
like, huh?
backwards, honestly.
It's either between Time Cop and this movie. You just travel back and you just slap the movie out of the hand. Like, no Time Cop.
Mind you, annihilating, would be a really bad thing because in physics it's basically like, like in Death Stranding, if you touch one of those, whatever the ghosts are called.
Yeah.
BDs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
BDs,
the
yeah.
BTs. Yeah, if you
Yeah,
touch them,
BTs.
they basically, annihilate into a thermonuclear explosion. That's basically annihilation in nuclear physics.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, that would be bad.
Right.
Yeah.
But in Time Cop, they don't. They just.
I
melt.
know,
They
right?
just melt.
Just-
Oh, man.
Oh god, it was fucking hilarious.
it's really
Uh,
It's a classic in time travel.
oh man,
It's something. That's not the word I would.
Well,
Yeah,
I
but-
watched the backwards and I don't remember anything except that part.
Yeah, your memory's going backwards in time, so it's
Pretty much. To the point where I
it's
didn't
reverting.
remember.
It's reverting itself.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could just, unlearn some things? If somebody showed you the, cups, two girls in a cup video, you're like, I really wish I could go back 10 seconds when I didn't know about this.
You warn yourself too.
Yeah,
Get extra
exactly.
mile.
Just don't watch, two girls in a cup. What's that? Ah, shit.
But what if that turns out that that's what makes you do watch it, so therefore you just doing
Yeah.
the very thing that you don't want to do. Oh man. Okay, what about this one then? God, there's just so many. I could just dish out more. Okay, so okay, I don't remember specifically the scene, but in Magnolia, okay, there's no time travel in it, but there is this thing that happens where a character wants to commit suicide by jumping off the roof. I'm pretty sure it's Magnolia, but I haven't seen that movie in a long time. But I always remember this distinct scene because it has to do with fate. So that fate in the sense that you're always doomed to get there, destined to be there. So one of the characters is on the roof and he's going to commit suicide. His parents are always arguing, and they have this tendency to argue and pretend to take a shotgun out and shoot each other as part of their kind of routine of arguments. And the son's depressed and blah blah blah. He just the parents are terrible. Anyways, he's gonna commit suicide. He's at the roof, and they're in this hotel, this really long, big building. He's gonna jump off, and what theoretically would happen was that he would land on the pool, and the pool wouldn't save him because realistically, from that height, you would still smack the water like concrete.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't know is that there's a net, so he would not die. Right, so for whatever reason, there's a net there. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, so he is gonna jump off, and at the same time, his parents are having that typical argument. And the thing he did was part of his suicide plan was to put in real shotgun shells, because they would only threaten each other with nothing in it. And his thinking is that he's going to basically force one of them to kill each other as part of his suicide grand scheme. Again, I don't know if this is exactly how it was in the story, but I haven't seen Magnolia in forever. But generally speaking, this is the biggest point, is that they do this thing, the routine at the window, and the window is this really large, you see over to the pool, and he jumps coincidentally when she fires, it misses and hits him on his way down. And the idea here was that was fate saying that inevitably he would die anyways, even though he had planned to kill himself it as a suicide. Or did fate wanted basically is fate still under your control? Is it always doomed for him to die, whether or not he got shot, or him thinking that he's gonna kill himself? So yeah. So because he's the one that put the shotgun shell in there, right? So he technically committed suicide, but it didn't.
Right.
He's not the one that pulled the trigger. Yeah. So that's and that plays into time travel to me, in the sense that if there's a singular timeline they can't control, which is Terminator, or at least the original Terminator without the Dark Fate part, and then how Tenet explains it too, which is whatever had already happened is gonna happen, which is a collision to then why bother stopping Sator? If the universe was gonna collide then and annihilate itself, wouldn't it just self-correct itself without your input, or without you making the choice? So I don't know. Right? Yeah. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna say, I just thought of one of the coolest, sci-fi time travel, sort of time travel stories that, from the past couple of years, and that was Arrival.
Oh,
remember?
Yeah.
Amy
That's
Adams
Denis
Villeneuve.
did that one.
Yeah, the guy who made
remember that, Brenda?
Blade Runner.
Yeah, Blade Runner 2049. Yeah.
Making the new Dune.
Brenda, hello.
Huh?
Brenda.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? You know what we're talking about? Arrival? Do you remember that? You like that movie, right?
Yeah, that was okay.
Oh,
It wasn't bad.
yeah, it was pretty enjoyable. But yeah, isn't the reason why you're bringing that up is because it turns out, okay, of course, spoiler. That the aliens they're talking to isn't aliens; they're just evolved versions of humans or something shit like that, right? Is that what we're getting at?
They are aliens.
Oh,
but they have to.
They weren't. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, they're definitely, they're sort of this octopus-like aliens whose language works in a circular way.
You're right. The circle.
And the way that Yeah, exactly. And that's the way that they perceive time. They don't perceive it in a line. They perceive like
In a
the
circle.
whole thing. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. They perceive
Right, they're
both the
fifth dimensional beings who like see time as it actually is. Like,
Yeah.
whereas we see it like the only reason we perceive time the way we perceive it is like because that's the only way our brains could actually like understand it and
Right.
make sense of it. Whereas they like are sort of objective viewers.
Yeah.
Right.
They basically see the whole film, whereas we only see one slice at a time.
Right.
And yeah, that's basically also one of those moments where like she's only the protagonist is only aware of certain points in time. And what seems, again, spoilers for this movie, which is a really great movie. You should definitely watch it. What seems like flashbacks to her daughter, succumbing to cancer, like it's actually visions from the future.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a good use of time travel, or not in sense time travel, but time in general.
Yeah. And in the sense that like it's one of those movies again where like everything that happens in the movie has already happened and will happen, and it's not something where like they're changing the future. It's something that it's it's already happened.
It's a kind of sad, but also freeing to think that that means the consequence of which your choices.
Just give up the illusion of free will. You'll be a lot better for it.
Or like give up the pressure of the choices you make and just enjoy the ride. Being present with the moment.
Yeah. But do buckle up, please, because don't think that just because hey, maybe I'm not gonna die today, it's a good time to not buckle up. No, buckle up. Wear the mask.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything else? Like, I mean, that was a nice little veering off in terms of different use of time in different stuff.
Yeah.
If y'all never played Prince of Persia, that's fun. Sands of Time and whatnot. Is actual game mechanic where you're using time to revert and come back. It's like pretty cool idea, which kind of works for today's games these days. And seeing as how death is in games where it's like roguelike or Souls-like games, where there's just death is part of the mechanic.
Yeah.
Right.
Did we lose somebody?
No, I don't think so.
No, it was me. I had a...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had to disconnect and connect again.
Okay.
I kept thinking through the entirety of Tenet, and was like, oh my god, this would be a cool video game. I want somebody to make a video game like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's a trippy concept, very trippy concept. But yeah, a modern Prince of Persia would be great.
They are remaking it. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. No, that's news to me.
Yeah. Ubisoft is doing a half-assed remake of it.
Oh, I see. Wait, it's not a remake. Is it a remaster or a remake?
It looks like a remaster. So it's the half step between a remaster and a remake, because I mean the graphics are from back in the PlayStation 2 GameCube era, so those textures are definitely not going to pass. So they basically just remade the models.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty much, and they look they look butt ugly. They actually probably look better back in the PS2 era.
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta check that out sometime.
It's
You
sad.
guys have to check out the Time Cop video game.
No.
Is there a Time Cop video game? Oh my god, I need to look that up.
It's a side-scrolling action video game produced by Cryo Interactive for the NES in 1995. It is based on the 1994 film of the same title.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes place after the events of the film, is what it says. So.
We need more of that story.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, they have screenshots too. It's actually a side scroller, but it's actually like pictures of people. No, so like
what?
Yeah, so it's not actually like a character. Yeah, it's basically thinking if you're how would I say?
It's like
If you just
digitized.
it's like digitized, like let's say like you Photoshop it and you animate it.
Ah,
Right.
That's
so a little
basically
bit
what
more like
it
Mortal
looks like.
Kombat, like back in the day, Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I
Oh,
see, I
right,
see.
like the crappy version of Street Fighter, the movie, the game of the movie.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
That was a piece of shit.
Yeah. The game
Uh,
of the movie of the game.
yeah.
That goddamn. God.
Would it be fun if they made a movie based on the game on the based on the movie? That's also based on a game. You just keep
Uh.
going into like an infinite regress.
Oh
Uh,
God.
oh
All
my
right.
god. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of it. It is but ugly.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Time travel, time, use of time.
I guess it's time to end the show, or maybe to begin it.
All right. Well, like and
Time is
subscribe,
up.
and share this, and thank you for listening to our gibberish.
Now let me say it backwards.
Our ramblings.
Oh yeah, we'll play this whole hour backwards too, just for y'all.
Oh God, backwards speech. Get it all
We're gonna have
authenticity.
We'll do a small intro of our conversation backwards. Oh man. Alrighty. Yeah. I'll see y'all next time.
Peace.
Bye.